If you could please bring up slide 22 of the drawings pack. Yeah, thank you. So the site comprises a lawned, deep road verge, which is situated to the west of the roundabout junction on Pellat Road. There are no specific planning designations for this site. The proposal seeks the development of 13 homes within a staggered height 5-storey building. Parking and refuse are also provided for on site. Since the publication of the committee reports and after the deadline for the supplementary reports was passed, a further objection to the proposed development was received. The objection raised concerns with the consultation process and the impact on biodiversity and trees. The consultation for this application was carried out in accordance with statutory requirements, and the biodiversity net gain requirement was assessed and considered to meet the relevant legislative requirements. With regard to the impact on trees and wildlife, the proposed development has been considered acceptable for the reasons set out within the committee reports. The retention and planting of trees, as well as ecological enhancements, were reviewed and considered to align with policy requirements, as well as mitigating any potential impact upon local biodiversity. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions just of clarification at this stage? No, so we'll move on to the first of our speakers, Katharina Kush. Hi, there's a speaker's chair over there. If you just come forward, please. Thank you. We'll put 3 minutes on the screen, and yeah, so that's up there now. So it'll just begin as soon as you start.
I'm here to represent over 300 family homes which are connected to Pellat Road. So there is a cul-de-sac and there are numerous 4 different other cul-de-sacs dependent on it, as well as a sports ground and access to the retail park. We are not in favor of this proposal. Number one, the resident consulting process has not been done properly. Many of the directly impacted properties have not been informed, and in fact there is still some people who are not aware that this planning permission has been submitted. Of the 35 residents in the immediate surrounding, none of them have seen the site notice, which apparently, as per the report, was put up. I have not seen it personally, and right now there is no site notice. Number two, access issues and parking is, everybody should be well aware of that. I walk down this road every day. The report said there's 56 car parking spaces. I walked down an hour ago. There are 0 car parking spaces on Pellat Road. The survey that was done in the report was done on Tuesday, Wednesday, and January, outside of busy working hours, outside of the season where the sports ground is used by the football teams. It's false, it's inaccurate. We've had many incidents where emergency services could not access through Pellat Road. There was a fire 4 years ago. If that would happen right now, the fire emergencies would not be able to get to that retail park. Number 3, sunlight and privacy. So that property will look directly into gardens, both in Walden Gardens and also in Crown Green Mews, and it also affects my own property. The distance, as said in the report, is under 16 meters window to window, which is well below the SPD1 standard of 18 meters. We are sacrificing privacy into gardens, dining rooms, and bedrooms, including children's bedrooms. So number 4, loss of green space. Again, there is an inaccuracy in the report. Trees and shrubs have been mislabeled and missed out. And you may not care about trees, but you should care about the integrity of the report, because that's what you're using to make a decision today. Again, there is false information in there. I'm hoping that this is not the level of professionalism we can expect from the developer, and certainly, hopefully, it's not the level of professionalism we can expect from this council. But we can solve this. You need to conduct a proper site visit. How many of you have actually seen and stood on the site? It's a small green space next to a roundabout. It's not appropriate for a tower block of flats, which this is. It's 5 stories high. All the surrounding buildings are 2 stories. And we're building 3 family homes. And we're impacting 300 family homes. This is completely inappropriate for the space that you've got. Overall, this has a negative impact on the community. It's not contributing to Brent's large amount of housing that you need to build. 3 family homes again. This is a profit-driven endeavor for a developer who wants to sell small flats. Thank you.
So if you just stay in your chair, members of the committee might have a question for you based on what you've said. Any members of the committee like to ask a question? Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Given that's to say a natural green space, what would you have liked seen happen on that site?
So right now, the green space is used by families, dog walkers. It's used for picnics. It's actually wildlife has been ignored. It's a cross pass through from the gardens to the sports ground. But squirrels, hedgehogs, there is birds of prey now in the area, which is actually really lovely to see. So that's what's being used right now. This can be further established with seating or other greenery space to make it more of use. Right now, there's no paint benches. We've requested benches, but it's private property. We are not allowed to touch it. Although I do have to say, I do clean it up every Friday. I go there and collect rubbish because Brent Council is not coming into this area to collect rubbish. So I'm keeping it clean.
But given that the borough is suffering from a lack of affordable housing or shortage of housing, would you like to see any properties built on that site?
I don't think this piece of land is appropriate for tower, like a flats or towers. Okay. In general, I think that's fine. So most of my neighbors in Walton Gardens is social housing. I have no problem with social housing, but the way this piece of land is being intended to use is a problem. There was no social housing included in the proposal, by the way, 0.
Any other members? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Baker.
I just want to ask one thing. You said about the controlled parking. Is that at the moment, is the parking controlled or is not controlled? You said there's about 56 car or something like that.
There is no, so the 56 car parking spaces, I think, is a myth. It doesn't exist right now on Pellat Road. And I think you have pictures printed out in front of you. There's a small stretch where you can park about 10 cars that's constantly parked.
So are these controlled or not?
I don't think they're controlled.
Thank you.
Is it, we'll talk about control, but Wembley event zone, is it just event days?
Yes, they're part
Just
of the event
days, yeah.
day, which is actually increasing now. So they're increasing it to all weekends.
Yeah, so that's the control.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, the events, yes.
Yeah, thanks. Any other members of the committee at this point? No, okay, well, thank you very much for your time. If you could just turn off the microphone and retake your seat, much appreciated. We have a second objector here in person, Councillor Michael Maurice. Just to be clear as well, although obviously Michael Maurice is a councillor in Brent, not for this ward, so is speaking in a capacity as a local person and therefore has 3 minutes, which is less than ward councillors would have, just if anyone's unclear about the process. If we just put it up on screen and then Michael, you know the drill.
So, yeah, right, okay. There are a number of reasons why I think this application should be refused. The consultation is flawed. It would appear that quite a number of residents did not receive any consultations letters from the council, and that the planning department will probably tell you they sent out the letters. But residents say they haven't been received, and as this seems to be a common occurrence, I'm more inclined to believe the residents than the officers. I'm told that the site notice was either not erected or put up quite some way from the site. This is not acceptable. It is not the first time that this has occurred, but with different applications. Daylight sunlight measurements. Daylight sunlight measurements were taken at points which affect the were not taken at points which affect the residents who would be nearest to the proposed block of flats. I'm told that people who live in the dwellings where the measurements were supposedly taken were not contacted by anyone. It is mine and other residents' opinion that these measurements, if they were taken at all, were designed possibly to mislead the officers and the planning committee. The character and appearance. The site is in the middle of a nice estate comprising of some flats and townhouses, most of which is 2-storey with some 3-storey. The dwellings nearest the proposed developments are a mix of 2- and 3-storey, but the 3-storey homes are somewhat lower down, so the roof line is in sympathy with the 2-storey homes. This development is 5 stories high. It will overshadow the whole estate. It is totally out of character with its surroundings, and it certainly does not complement the local context. The proposed building is within 15 metres of 13 Crown Green Mews and overlooks habitable rooms. Thus, the occupiers' privacy would therefore be breached, or would appear to be breached. Delivery of construction materials. Paragraph 97 on page 22 of the report states that the construction lorries will be able to turn round at the rear of the site. Where exactly? There is no room at the rear of the site unless you propose removing the wall and utilising the road in Walton Gardens and Crown Green Mews, which would be totally unacceptable. Car parking. Pellat Road, apart from servicing Chamberlain Avenue, Edison Drive, Walton Gardens and Crown Green Mews, also serves as an entry-exit to the GEC industrial estate. Heavy goods vehicles often use this road to access the estate. I'm not sure when the car parking survey was carried out, but it does not reflect the amount of available car spaces. And when I visited the area on mid-Sunday morning, there appeared to be no free spaces available at all. Please look at your pictures. They were taken just on Sunday morning, last Sunday morning. Parking on the other side of the road would make the road impassable to larger vehicles, especially the emergency services. Parking partly or wholly on the pavement is of course prohibited. The council assertion that 3 car parking spaces is totally wrong, and I would be very surprised as would existing residents if this is found to be correct. How does the council propose to stop residents of this proposed development parking on Pellat and surrounding roads? And Pellat Road.
Sorry, you've just gone over your time. If you could just
Right,
wrap up here,
okay.
please.
It's in the event day zone, so we need assurances that residents of the development, if it goes ahead, are not entitled to parking permits. And it is both mine and the residents' opinion that this development will bring little benefit to Brent, but will have a huge detrimental effect on the neighbouring streets and dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone like to ask any questions of this objector? No, I think you've made your points very clearly. So if you could just return to your seat there, but thank you ever so much for taking time to participate this evening. We have still 2 more speakers. So Councillor Kennelly as the ward councillor is next. As I noted, ward councillors who represent the area where the development is have 5 minutes, which is different to the previous speaker, just to note for anybody who hasn't observed our proceedings before. Councillor Kennelly, just as soon as the time comes on screen, if you'd like to begin your remarks.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be succinct. This application is going to be overbearing for me and my residents. You've already heard from the previous 2 speakers that the properties currently on Walton Gardens, Crown Green Mews and Chamberlain Avenue that neighbour this development are roughly 2 to 3 stories high. How the developer and the planners have come to this as a 5-story application, I am not sure, because normally when we have applications, whether it be Preston Library or whether it be on Brook Avenue, that this committee has approved, we have rightfully said that they need to be in keeping with the area, i.e. they increase in height the further you get away and nearer to places like the Wembley Event Day Zone. I think this would stand out in the area as very overbearing. It's a delight to see 25% family homes in there, which is policy compliant. But what is not policy compliant, however, and as noted by the first speaker, is the fact that none of this will help towards the council's growing waiting list that we are desperately trying to get down as fast as possible. I do recognise that the developer is looking to make a civil contribution here. However, I'm not really sure what benefit that would be to the local area in here. There is improvements you could bring into the park, but the reality is that these homes, they're not going to be very affordable. They are going to be overbearing and invading residents' privacy on Walton Gardens and Crown Green Mews in particular, and they will be denying them the right to daylight and sunlight at the same time. It strikes me as confusing as to why they have gone with such an overbearing development. Regarding the parking, I quite agree with Councillor Michael Maurice actually on this. I don't know when the parking survey was taken, but I can tell you that stretch of road is frequently parked on, is frequently busy. We don't normally have much room to swing a cat, let alone park a car in there. So for me, would very simply say that given we are in Preston Ward, it's still technically commuter country, even though now more and more of our residents are moving towards public transport. Still about 40% to 50% are still, you bring in a car, buying a car and expect to be able to use that to drive their kids to school for other reasons as well, to the local supermarket up in Kenton. And I would be quite stunned myself if the assessments that have been made by the planning team turn out to be correct. This does seem to be a huge underestimation. I would say you'd be looking at probably at least 15 cars, probably a bit more, coming into this area. And it's understandably so. It's a country, it's very frequent up there. And residents in the area know that this parking space will not be available. There is the risk of heavy impact on the business side on the development. We don't want to be negatively hurting small to medium-sized businesses in the business park and preventing deliveries coming into there on a daily basis. But also, as Michael has already pointed out, the difficulties with getting heavy goods vehicles for the construction out of this area is going to be very, very difficult. You can't drive through Walton Gardens, as many of you will probably have done a site visit there. That parking is not available, and you can't drive through Chamberlain Avenue or Edison into Hurst Crescent / East Lane, because that is only connected via an alleyway. So this does create a challenge logistics wise, and I'm not sure this has been adequately thought out by the planners and by officers here. The loss of green space is finally very, very concerning. Yes, this is an underutilised piece of land. Yes, it is private. It is on the private landowner to maintain it, which they have struggled to do so, and sometimes, quite frankly, refuse to do so. So, in conclusion, I would say, with the loss of privacy, the overbearing nature of this development and the concerns that I have over parking, I would very much ask the committee to vote against this. On a final note, we do not want a CPZ. We don't need a CPZ. And I know that, like with other developments, this will be a car-free one, as the committee can put it that way, and we do not want it included in the event day permits. Let's make this as difficult as possible for people to buy and put cars here.
Thank you. I've got just a quick question. I think obviously you're talking about why why this area may have been sort of taken and an intense development there. I think there's just obviously sort of two parts to that, and I'd just consider your view as a ward council what the alternative would be. I mean, first of all, obviously you acknowledge yourself we have a housing crisis and need to get towards contributing to that. Areas with a high PTAL, therefore, ones where people, most Londoners don't have a car, and actually the trend to car ownership is down across London. So we need to obviously find sites in places with high PTAL rating that this is. And then also when we do develop a site, we've thrown out things before because they don't make the maximum use of the site that's there. So, this is a site which is high PTAL, so would be targeted in that way. And then we have a responsibility to ensure it's maximised as well, because, we'll only develop it once in our lifetime. So that might sort of answer some of your questions about why the number of houses on there. So with that in mind, is that not the kind of sort of housing you welcome in an area where people can commute, use public transport, and ensure that we get the maximum new houses that we can?
Definitely, we want the maximum amount that we can get. Of course we do. As I say, I acknowledge that this is policy compliant on family housing, something that we're desperate for in this borough. What I think we have missed out there, though, is that although London as a whole is changing, that is heavily weighted within a London, that rating as well. This part of Brent has not yet moved towards that fully. It still is quite car heavy in terms of the assessments that you pointed to. And I think that this is going to add to that inevitably, unfortunately. We do have a strain on our public transport in this area. Preston Road doesn't have the frequency of trains that Wembley Park benefits from further on down the line, which residents in Brook Avenue rightfully get a car-free development. They should not be getting that there. But here, residents are going to want to bring their cars. Now, there is obviously the thing that there's a lack of a CPZ there, but I hope the committee will make sure there is a point in principle that we do not allow them event day permits to make this as difficult as possible. And that is something, therefore, that we can start to control this with.
Right, thank you. Any other members of the committee? Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Given your objection to the height of the development, and because you say it's overbearing, what would be a more reasonable or suitable level of development on that site?
I think it's just perfectly reasonable and sensible that any development in this area, should it go ahead, was capped at the same height as the properties neighbouring. Going well above and beyond that, I think, is quite frankly unnecessary and impacts negatively on the people already living there. Yeah, I think it's unkeeping, and I would refer to you as Preston Community Library, when that went forward, it was in keeping, height-wise, with other neighbouring properties. Residents might, and myself, weren't happy with the development on the record, but it has proven to be the case there, and I don't see why this needs to be an exception.
Okay, don't see any further hands at this point, so if you could retake your seat, Councillor Kennelly, and we have our final speaker now, Max Plotnick. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. As the agent, you have 3 minutes, as with the other local speakers, and then we'll ask any questions that we have. So if we could just get 3 minutes on the screen, please. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Max Plotnick. I'm the planning consultant for Caswell and Dano, the applicant. Adam is here with me this evening. We started an extensive engagement process with your officers back in September 2023, and after 17 months, 3 detailed pre-app meetings and several iterations of our scheme, we submitted our planning application. Prior to that, we also conducted a full consultation with local residents. As a result, our scheme has significantly evolved to improve the design quality of the proposal. We have unequivocal support from your officers and the council's internal and external consultees. And whilst the case officer's report is a ringing endorsement of our proposal, I thought it might be useful to summarise some of the key points. Number 1, our proposal will significantly enhance the biodiversity on site. The site currently is of low ecological value with no protected species or habitats being identified. Our proposal will introduce a 12% biodiversity net gain, a 0.72 urban greening factor score through extensive landscaping, native species planting, habitat boxes, hedgehog gateways, and 29 new trees. The site includes no shelter from the elements, no benches, no play equipment. The site is of little interest compared to Preston Park and the GEC sports ground in the near vicinity. Your officers have concluded that the loss of the land is outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. Number 3, we have worked hard on the design to ensure that our scheme works well in its setting, and we note your placemaking manager has commented that an exemplary approach to materiality has been provided. The building massing underwent rigorous testing at pre-application stage. Number 4, 3 much needed family homes are also provided, along with a contribution of £91,000 towards affordable housing, which is more than the minimum amount identified to be viable by the council's advisors. We've also committed to a £30,000 contribution towards local traffic calming measures, plus a large seal payment of over £500,000 to be used for local infrastructure. We wanted to ensure that not only will these units be wonderful homes to live in, but that their impact on existing neighbours will be minimised as best as possible. The daylight testing has shown full compliance with the BRE guidance, and separation distances to neighbouring buildings are also considered to be adequate. In summary, the proposal will deliver 13 much-needed, sustainable, energy-efficient homes that will be added to the council's housing delivery target. I urge councillors to grant permission this evening in accordance with our officer's unreserved recommendation and to allow this scheme to proceed and to contribute to much needed housing in the borough. Many thanks.
Okay, so on that basis, if we can move to the vote, can those in favour please raise their hands at this point? Okay, anybody voting against? Okay, so that has carried, obviously, due to majority, but Councillor Johnson, can we hear your reasons for voting against, please?
I think it relates to the parking issue. There is no proper control on the parking, the estates. I do understand that there is the Wembley Stadium event scheme that runs, but I think that it's not in keeping with the local area, which is, I think it is overbearing from my point of view.
Okay, thank you. Your views have been noted and recorded, but obviously everybody else has voted for, so that has passed.